Our most recent word of the week was enkakeo. I lose heart, I become discouraged, I am worn out and tired. And we saw an example of it in Luke chapter 18, verse 1. And I had mentioned then that we would take a look today at the interesting use of infinitives to communicate an idea. And it also is going to show us one of the challenges of dealing with infinitives. So first up, let's look at Luke chapter 18, verse 1 from the ESV, and you'll notice that last Wednesday's word of the week, enkakeo, is in the verse. And he told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. And not lose heart here is me enkakein. It's an infinitive that is negated, not to lose heart. So there's our word of the week from Wednesday, but let's take the verse apart, phrase by phrase, and we'll see how the infinitives govern our understanding of it, and we'll pick up some important issues about dealing with infinitives. So first up, elegan de parabole autois. So elegan is an imperfect form of lego, and it's literally he, she, or it was saying. So de, but he was saying, parabolein, a parable. In the accusative case, it's the direct object of the verb. Autois, a dative plural, to them. But he was saying a parable to them. So the imperfect verb is the narrator, here in this case Luke, bringing the story to life. We would expect apen, he said in the aorist tense. He spoke this parable, or he spoke a parable to them. But by using the imperfect, he's giving the story life. He was saying a parable to them. This is a terrible way to start a chapter. If the chapter starts by saying he was saying a parable to them who? Why is he saying a parable to them? We don't have any context. We just launch in as though this is a parable in a vacuum. But it's not a parable in a vacuum. There are no parables in vacuums. They're all set in a particular context and have a purpose that is discernible by their audience. So if you go back and look at chapter 17, you see that it ends with a discourse about the seeming business as usual of day-to-day life while people are waiting for God's interruption, his intervention into the world in the parousia. So what we get here is Jesus talking about people working in a field, and one is saved and one is lost. One is ready and one is not ready. And the challenges of the waiting, where you get into the day-to-day routine of that goes on for an unknowable and undetermined amount of time while you wait. But then we get followed by this parable that talks about an unjust judge. He's literally described as a judge who doesn't fear God and doesn't care about people, and he's being petitioned by a persistent widow. She keeps coming and pleading her case. I need justice with my adversary. But this is a guy who doesn't care about God or people. He doesn't care about this widow. She has no influence, no power over him, no reason for him to care what she says or thinks. So she just keeps coming back again and again. One might say that she prays always and never gets discouraged, never gives up, never loses hope, right? So that's the context in place here. The parable is not in a vacuum. You need to go back and look at chapter 17 to establish it, and then when you read the parable, you need to see what it says about that context in chapter 17. So let's carry on with our verse 1 from chapter 18. The next phrase is prostodein, to show that it is necessary for. So the ESV said, told a parable to the effect that they ought to always pray and never lose heart. But here, pros to dein, we have a combination of pros, the preposition, plus to, the neuter article singular, plus an infinitive. And when we see that combination, pros plus an article plus an infinitive, it is showing us purpose. So the infinitive is being controlled by the preposition. And if you go to whatever Greek grammar you happen to have access to, you will find in the infinitive mood section a chart or a list of what different prepositions do to infinitives and how they control them. Pros plus the article plus the infinitive shows purpose. Here, the infinitive is dein. Normally, we see it without the nu. We see de. And de is it is necessary for, or it is necessary to. It's an infinitive that communicates a compulsion. This is a must. This is necessary. This is something that has to happen. So we are told so far that Jesus spoke a parable to them. And what does the parable show? What does the parable communicate? It communicates that something is necessary for, and then we get to our next part. The next part is pantote pros eukesthai autus. Autus is, in the accusative case, it's plural and it's the pronoun them. So it is necessary for them, and then we get our second infinitive of the verse, pros eukesthai. It is necessary for them to what? To pray. Pros eukesthai from pros eukomai. Pros eukomai is I pray, but when we make it an infinitive, pros eukesthai, to pray. What's necessary? It is necessary for them, autus, pros eukesthai, to pray. And then we modify our infinitive with pantote, always. So the purpose of the parable is to declare a necessity, and that necessity is for them. Who are them? The them to whom Jesus spoke the parable, right? Because we were told he was saying a parable to them, autois. Now we're told it is necessary for autus, them, pros eukesthai, to pray pantote, always. What is the necessity? For them to always pray. Great stuff. Continual prayer is the necessity. And the purpose of the parable is to communicate the necessity of continual prayer. But wait, there's more. And one more thing, let's look at the last clause. Kai me enkakein, or enkakein, pardon me, and to never lose heart or become discouraged. Literally here, and to not lose heart or become discouraged. But here's the first thing I want to look at. The kai is a positive conjunction. So the two parts are parts of a whole. For them to pray always and never lose heart or never become discouraged are two parts of one thing. What is that one thing? It's the necessity. It's the dein in pros to dein. So he was saying a parable to them to show the necessity. The purpose of the parable is to communicate the necessity, dein. It is necessary for autus, them, pros eukesthai, to pray, pantote, always, kai, and one more thing, me enkakein, to not lose heart, to not become discouraged, to never lose heart. Why do I say never when never is not in the verse? Never is not explicitly in the verse, but because of the kai being a positive conjunction, joining the two infinitives that form the necessity together, if we're to always pray, if they are to always pray and not lose heart, it makes sense that in conjunction with the always, the not losing heart should be never, right? So I think that we are semantically in bounds here to say with the third infinitive, me en kakein, that we can say it's never lose heart, never become discouraged, because that pairs up naturally with the pantote pros eukesthai autus, that they should always pray and never lose heart. So, the purpose of the parable is to show two parts of one necessity, right? Of one whole. What is that necessity? The necessity is that they should always pray and never lose heart. So keep on praying. Don't get frustrated, discouraged, and lose heart, even if the circumstances make it seem like you're never going to get what you need. There's never going to be an intervention that's going to be favorable to you, that's going to solve your problem. What is followed by this introduction? A parable about a widow who's called persistent, who keeps on coming back to the unjust judge and saying, give me justice with my adversary. She's doing what to the judge? She is, in a sense, always praying to the judge. She's pleading for justice to this unjust judge. Give me justice with my adversary. And despite the fact that he's an unjust judge who neither fears God or cares about people, he eventually relents. And he even says, this woman's going to kill me. She's going to wear me out with her constant coming back and pleading. So not because I care about her or because I care about justice or I care about God, I'm going to grant her her wish to shut her up and get her to leave me alone. Is that how God works? No, but the point of the parable is to say, if even an unjust judge will eventually hear someone who never gives up, never gets worn out, and prays always, is continually coming back and pleading her case, what will a God who loves you do? So the context from chapter 17 says, you don't know. It may come to a point where you feel like he's never going to intervene in your situation, where you're never going to get an answer to your prayer. But then Luke tells us that he told them a parable that communicates the necessity that they should always pray and never give up, because sooner or later, even though it doesn't look like it, even though you feel like your prayers are hitting the ceiling, the intervention, the parousia, the return of the one telling you the parable is sure, and eventually you will get justice. You will get the intervention of God. And if you get worn out and give up and stop trusting, like the two women described in chapter 17, when the intervention comes, one is left behind and one is not. You don't want to give up. You don't want to count him out, because he's going to do what he said he's going to do, is the point of the parable. But let's talk about this. The three infinitives, dein, right, pros to dein, it is necessary for, and pros eukesthai, to pray, and en kakein, to give up, me en kakein, to not lose heart, to never lose heart. The three infinitives form the introduction to the parable, but it's Luke's introduction. It's an editorial comment, right? It's not Jesus introducing the parable. It's not Jesus saying, let me tell you a story that communicates that you should always pray and never give up. never lose heart. It's Luke interpreting in advance the meaning and significance of the parable as a narrator. That's pretty interesting. This is how Luke understands what the parable means. So what should you do now? I would encourage you to go back and read chapter 17 to establish the context, then read the parable in chapter 18, and you decide if you agree with Luke's interpretation of the parable. His introduction gives away his interpretation of the parable. Why is Jesus telling this parable? To communicate to them, whoever them are, you have to go look at it in the context, that it is necessary for them to always pray and to never lose heart, give up, become discouraged. Great stuff, very interesting. Remember, if you find an infinitive with a seemingly out-of-place article in front of it and it's preceded by a preposition, the preposition controls that infinitive, and you need to look at the chart to decide how it controls it. In this case, pros plus to plus an infinitive communicates purpose. I hope that was good for you. Infinitives are fascinating. They're used a bunch of different ways. And in this case, we found out by this use that the infinitive is necessary. It is necessary for them to pray and to never lose heart. Hope that was good for you. If it was, you know what to do with the like, share, subscribe, hit the notification ding, or leave feedback in the comments. Tell a friend, do all of that great stuff so that the algorithm promotes the videos to other people. And until next time, Charis Kai Reini Humin, grace and peace to you.